if we could start with the morning sessions, are there people here who were at those morning sessions who would like to give a very quick report about one key idea that came up in those sessions in which you were asked to address those particular questions that we gave you? If the leaders of those sessions could kind of jump in here, that would be great.
I would just say, Paul, I wasn't the leader, but I was given the task of reporting after the
Great.
person who took the notes. So basically around the Ukraine situation, one key point that was made was that the way that the media presented the Ukraine as a just cause really reinforced this whole concept of military, increasing the military budget, made it more mainstream and made it, you know, continue to be a big item that people didn't want to cut because it seemed like legitimate. And then all in terms of the questions about the outcomes of the war, what concerned us the most, all those points that were raised concerned us, you know, draining the public treasury, et cetera, including also climate catastrophe. And then finally, the way its militarism is across the entire society continues to be a big problem. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Any other leaders? Rosemary?
Yes. Our morning group, in talking about militarization, a number of us had the experience in organizing where just talking about the problem and explaining how terrible it is wasn't a particularly useful organizing strategy. So we thought having a positive vision is something that will mobilize people much more quickly, a vision of a positive future. And so we were talking about what could keep us safe. We also thought maybe bird dogging Catherine Clark would be a good strategy, since she is from Massachusetts, and would have some power. Another thing we thought should be done is to support the Christmas truce idea that we heard about from Cole, and also fully funding the VA, which has 50,000 empty positions due to lack of money, and addressing the fact that, sorry, this is more than one, addressing the fact the VA is not under the Pentagon budget.
Okay, thanks, Rosemary. Those are some really good ideas. Susan?
Okay, a summary of the effects of Ukraine war were that the Ukraine war discussions have made for divisiveness and some uncertainty and lack of clarity about what all the adjacent issues are, but there's common ground for the most of us, which is to end the war through diplomacy and negotiations. We also thought all of those issues were important. We felt in terms of practical next steps to change campaign financing, keep making connections and interrelationships and links between militarization and police violence and racial justice, keep presenting our alternative vision to restructure society, and discuss with citizens why so much money is going to the defense industry.
Thank you, Susan. Are there any other small group leaders out there?
In the morning session, Paul, I
Yes.
was the recorder. Mary Ellen was the session leader. There
Go ahead,
was,
Bruce.
thank you. There was a sense of personal numbness, of overwhelmedness, it was all too big and too much. And here we are we're just paying for it again. You know, the military industrial complex is a thing. It has its independent existence almost. Diplomacy is a word that seems to have not had any current relevance. and that it was hard for some of us to make connections in our, for lack of a better word, despair about this. It was just too big. There was an overkill quality to it. Anyhow, that's what I recorded.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Bruce, keep in mind, everyone, that we are going to be trying to set up a session in January to really come up with concrete responses to these issues that are being raised here. I'm sorry, someone else was trying to give a report.
Exactly. Paul, this is Henry, and from our group, people noted the difference between the connections between the peace movement during the Vietnam crisis and war and currently. And the big difference between that time and this is there were real connections with millions of people in that period. And we don't enjoy that same connection currently. So the conclusion is there's a need to hone our message so that it connects meaningfully to the lives of ordinary people. And accompanying that, we have to spend more time interacting with people and less time talking with one another. And so we have to be able to show how the issues that we advocate for require and call for changes in the military budget. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Henry. Yeah, so let's, that's one thing to definitely follow up on, how we get out there and out of our own worlds and out into the world of everyone else out there, and show that military budget and how it impacts what's going on out there. Anyone else want to report?
Hi, my name is Bo, and I'll talk a bit about the Money Out of Politics movement. So in Massachusetts,
That's
well,
this
first of all,
afternoon session.
Wait a minute. Paul, did you
This
want to
is-
switch to the afternoon breakouts already, or?
Not yet, no. Let's finish off the morning sessions. Hold on a second, Bo, and we'll get into that. Anyone else from this morning? I'll just say that this session that I was in, a lot of the same themes. One of the best expressions of it in terms of the Ukraine war and its impact, that one of our participants talked about friends being transformed into war hawks because of the Ukraine war and the invasion, and that this is causing various types of rifts within particular groups, from DSA to Mass Peace Action and other groups trying to deal with these issues. The ideas that people came up with about what we do is we go right out to people, as someone just mentioned, go door to door if necessary, to meet with people and inform them how that military budget is impacting the things about their lives that really matter to them, and figure a way of communicating that. So if there are no more reports from the morning session, why don't we go into the breakouts that we just finished? So is there anyone from Building Political Power with the Massachusetts Indigenous
do have
Legislative Agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a morning one. I'm hoping Brian's going to give the report back.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Brian, go
Sure.
ahead.
Yeah, I can say a couple of things, although I think there was a lot of parallel thinking going on, so I'll be brief. A lot of similar concerns, especially the amount of money that is being spent versus the amount that's being spent to curb climate change, the opportunity costs involved. Yeah, also a desire to really connect issues of militarism to kitchen table issues to reach people. One thing looking forward was anticipating an opportunity that this is going to create, the crisis that this is going to lead to, the effect on the world economy, and what might happen, and looking ahead to realize that if progressives aren't there with the message to connect military spending to this economic crisis, that the right wing will be right there to do so. We heard examples from people as right wing as Marjorie Taylor Greene, who were opposing some of this military aid and really making that about connecting that to things like the lack of baby formula in this country. So if progressives aren't there to make those connections, the right wingers will take advantage of that disingenuously. And we're already seeing in places like Italy, people are willing to turn to the far right if answers are not provided by progressives.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Anyone else from the morning session? Thanks for bringing that up, Martha. So let's go to the afternoon sessions. And how about the Indigenous Legislative Agenda, that session? Would someone just want to quickly report on what one of the main ideas that came out of that?
I'll quickly report three things because they're short, mid, and long-term goals. So
Great.
the short term, up until like the close of the session, focusing on Sila Mato Commission closing out on December 31st, trying to get Native American Heritage Act out during the informal session. Beyond that, midterm goal is working with labor, working with existing infrastructure with UU Mass Action to lobby and to get a strong contingent of co-sponsors for the next session where we refile the bills for the Indigenous agenda. And then long-term goals, we actually kind of brought up that the World Cup is actually going to be here in Boston in 2026. And so what are the possibilities for organizing around that as well? So yeah, those are the three things that we discussed.
Wow, there's an idea. Okay, next is the labor struggles. Is that you, Paul?
No, it's John Wiseman.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna also just put a summary in the chat. Two ideas. One is that we create the means to facilitate our individual involvement in labor action and supporting strike funds and whatever. And the other is that as a coalition, this coalition reach out to labor formations, old and new.
Okay. Very good. Ending incarceration of women and girls in Massachusetts. Was there a workshop on that?
Yes, thank you. So in the short term, we would like everyone to contact their legislatures, and I'm going to put a link in the chat for a toolkit and ask them to recommit to the prison moratorium. And then please watch for a relaunch in the end of January as we prepare to hold Governor Healy accountable and make her take a detailed position on criminal justice.
Thank you. Was that Christine Brown?
Yes.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks very much. Next, youth organizing.
Yeah, I can report back with just a couple of us. But one thing I was reflecting on something that Jordan said about that desire for quick fixes, which is fair because we know how much harm there is. And that's definitely a perspective that young people feel, that there's so much harm going on that we need to get these problems solved now, and there's a lack of time. But using that impulse in a positive way to build up something that's systemic, but also allows people to do something in the short term that is impactful, that makes them feel like they've really done something, and what they did made a difference, even if it's a small one. So one area where there is actually a lot of energy among young people is in counter recruiting. recruiters are having a huge problem in the military right now. And that is something that we can take advantage of and continue to press that message that recruiting for the military is not honest. And the numbers really reveal that. But not just directly recruiting for the military, but also recruiting for things like military contractors, the people who make these weapons. And that gives us an opportunity to engage on campuses where these institutions are trying to get young entry-level employees, and they really need those. So it's important for them. That also gives us the ability to be confrontational, to be direct, and that makes things more compelling and interesting, likely to get more attention. But also not just focusing on militarism, but also realizing that there's a big connection between these companies that produce weapons and also the banks that own them, who are also heavily invested in things like mass incarceration and fossil fuel companies that are killing our planet. So that's another way to make those connections between militarism and more kitchen table issues. I mean, housing too. There's a lot of predatory banks who take advantage of housing injustice too. So connecting those issues with youth organizing on campus provides us an opportunity to do that.
Okay, thanks, Brian. How about the conservative right's influence on public education?
We discussed our concerns about gun violence, censorship, teaching students with diverse backgrounds, and attempts by politicians to privatize education. We need deep, long conversations about education and its importance. We need to watch for bills to support, and we need to encourage people with progressive ideas to get on school boards.
Okay, was that Martha?
Yes.
Thank you, Martha Friedman. Very good. Next, how about understanding how to do effective electoral work, especially in disenfranchised communities? Anyone from that group here?
I am. I can try to sum it up very quickly.
Go ahead, Caroline.
So we talked a lot about how to communicate clearly, effectively, and win back the working class. Jordan had done a lot of work with figuring out where the working class were getting their news and why they had the positions that they were having, and we got a lot of insights as to how to start winning back the working class to the more progressive side of politics.
Great.
There's
Well,
a lot of detail.
Hopefully we'll learn those secrets soon. Okay, thanks, Caroline. Maybe in our strategy session in January.
Yeah.
The movement to get money out of politics. Any report?
Okay, money in politics. Everybody here cares about reining in the money that's flooding all of our elections. We want to address the military industrial complex. All these, whatever issue that you care about, it all links back to money in politics. And we have to make this a top priority issue before we can solve the other issues. So in Massachusetts, in 2018, we had a ballot question to establish the Citizens Commission to study this topic. They published 2 reports, and we have a solution. The solution is an amendment to the US Constitution on the topic of campaign finance reform. That's the only way we can get around our corrupt Supreme Court and our broken Congress and do it via the people and through the states. And so, yeah, that was the work of the Citizens Commission from back in 2018. And we're going to have a new Citizens Commission established next year in 2023. So I encourage everybody here, if you're even a little bit interested, to apply. The application is not online yet, so please send me a quick email if you are interested, and I'll keep you in a loop. My email is boyi@duck.com, and I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, if you could put that in the chat, Bo, that'd be great.
Yes, and also I have the link to our notes that we covered in our breakout session. So yeah, please join all these various groups that are focused on getting money out of politics, like American Promise, Represent Us, We the People Mass, Wolfpack, that's the group that I'm leading. And Wolfpack is having a workshop on December 17th. And I also encourage you to join it. And the link is also in the note.
Thank you, Bo. And you bring up a good point. We want all the people that took notes at these meetings to type those up and to make them available to the groups that have put on this conference. Maybe you could send them to Cole over at Mass Peace Action. Next working group was the building a movement to reform the Democratic Party in Massachusetts. How about that one?
That didn't meet, Paul.
Is that you, Russell?
Yeah, it did not meet.
Oh, it didn't meet. Okay. I guess the Democratic Party is safe for now.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, maybe they're safe. It's a question of whether we're safe.
That's what I mean, yeah. Next is the, how about unarmed response to crisis? Henry, were you gonna do that one?
Yeah. Hold on. So the main things are to note that depending on the city, if you look at all the 911 calls, the number of violent events that lead to 911 calls are 2 to 5% of all the calls. So if you now consider the nonviolent, which is everything from trespassing to someone drinking in public or a wellness check, that's at least 95% of all the calls. So by moving the responders to the nonviolent calls to a department separate from the police, you reduce the burden of work for police by an enormous amount. And therefore, for people who are concerned, let's say truly concerned about violent crime, this is perhaps the biggest single thing that you could do. And the outcomes for the nonviolent events are much, much better because people don't get incarcerated, they don't get police records, and there are lots of sources of data for programs like this. Durham, North Carolina is a great one, and now Amherst is here in Massachusetts has developed its program and has data as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry. Those are things we don't think about too often. So let's keep that whole outlook in mind. How about the Welcome to the Massachusetts Poor People's Campaign? Kathy, were you going to give us a short report?
Sure. We resonated to the idea that the Poor People's Campaign, one of its strengths is including the word moral in it, that all of the issues they deal with and that we deal with at Mass Peace Action and other groups are moral issues. They're not just political, they're not just economic, they are fundamentally moral. And there are universal moral codes. Every major religion of the world historically has endorsed the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And finding ways to revive that message may be our best path path to avoiding the end of life on Earth.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. And last that I have at least is the important climate fights in our own backyard. Why preserving local trees and forests matter.
Thanks, Paul. I'll try to be quick. We did a survey kind of presentation first, and then had discussion about the extent to which deforestation is not just a climate justice problem, but it's also not just a problem happening in places like Brazil in the rainforest, that it's actually happening in Boston in Malcolm X Park, or on Melnia Cass Boulevard, in Wakefield on a small hilltop, or in Massachusetts public lands where the Department of Conservation and Recreation has plans to log massive amounts of existing old forest land. And we recognize that the single most important thing, second only to ending the use of fossil fuels, would be preserving the existing forest canopy worldwide, but in Massachusetts, which happens to be one of the most heavily forested states by percentage of land in the country. It's a local problem, and we discussed the trees as a public good network that has been formed, that has brought together urban activists, suburban activists, rural activists in a network of mutual support and aid that we think is also a model for working with a variety of the common problems, the many different issues that we all deal with. There are plenty of local little nodal groups around the state that are not necessarily in contact with each other that could benefit from that kind of mutual support. The last thing I'd add is that, and this is really, Paul, a carryover from our morning discussions, the importance to, for all of us working on the social issues, including climate, to recognize the role that militarism and war play in exacerbating the struggles that we're all trying to deal with, that it's one more aspect of intersectionality that we often ignore, and that we ignore at our peril. The core message of the final discussion was, don't cut them down. Let them stand, let them grow, build around them, and maintain a habitable human future. Thanks.
And if there's one group that loves to cut down forests, it's the U.S. military.
And the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and
with those
Recreation.
800 bases. Okay. Thank you so much, Michael. And thanks everyone else. Is there any other report out there that did not get a chance to report yet? Okay, well, I think we're moving to a close. Cole, do you want to take us home here?
Sure. So I want to thank everyone again for coming today. We had some very rich discussions. We're going to be processing it for a while. I want to remind you that this event was sponsored by the Mass Progressive Action Organizing Committee, which is a coalition of 6 organizations. And we welcome other organizations to join us so that we can unite all progressive movements, both in terms of being more effective and more unified. So our next meeting is Friday morning, December 16th. So be in touch if your organization would like to get involved. Thank you very much for coming.